They told me fear makes you foolish. I believed that too, until the night I didn't open the door. I was washing the dishes, the radio humming some old Billie Holiday tune in the background, when I heard the knock. Not the kind of knock you expect from a neighbor or a delivery boy. This one was slow, deliberate, a single measured tap every few seconds. I stopped scrubbing the plate. It wasn't the sound itself that chilled me, but the silence that followed. No shuffle of feet, no creak of steps, no car pulling away. Just that one tap. Then stillness. 3 hours earlier, I'd been in my front garden pruning the hedges when Eleanor from next door shuffled over, her cardigan buttoned wrong and her lipstick smudged as always. "Don't open the door tonight, Mabel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Eleanor," I laughed, "you say that every year come autumn. What is it this time? Ghosts again?" But she didn't laugh. Her pale eyes, clouded with cataracts, fixed on mine like a woman who'd seen something. Not imagined. Seen. Not ghosts. Something worse. They only come when it's quiet. Don't matter who you are. I should have dismissed it, the way I always did. I've known Eleanor for 35 years. We both outlived our husbands, raised our children, buried half our friends. I thought her warning was just a product of too many long nights alone. But standing there in my kitchen, with the water still running over my hands, that knock replaying in my ears, I remembered her tone. And for once, I believed her. I turned the tap off, dried my hands slow. I didn't move to the door, didn't even peek through the curtains. Instead, I walked to the back of the house and locked the sunroom, checked the windows, turned off every light. My heart was beating hard, too hard for someone who hadn't done more than walk to the postbox in weeks. Another knock. This one was sharper, closer, not at the front, at the kitchen door. I hadn't used that entrance in years, the wood swollen from decades of weather. But I remembered the sound, how it used to be when my Harold came home from his shift at the docks and dropped his keys and gave 3 quick taps just like that. But Harold's been dead 17 years. I backed away from the door, knees trembling. "Mabel," came a voice, a man's voice. Not young, not old. Calm. "Mabel, I just want to talk." I didn't reply. "Mabel, I know you're in there. I saw your light earlier." That's when I remembered I hadn't turned off the porch lamp. It flickered sometimes, been meaning to fix it. But now I was grateful for its failure. It was out again. "I don't want any trouble," the voice said. Then came another sound, fingertips dragging across the wood, like a hand feeling the texture of an old book. That sound frightened me more than the knock. I backed into the living room and grabbed the cordless phone. Dead battery. Of course, I couldn't risk going to the hallway where my main phone was. I was afraid that if I passed by the door, the man would hear my steps. Instead, I crept to the pantry. It had a tiny window facing the alley. I used a chair to peek through. I saw nothing. Just the garbage cans, the damp gravel. But I could still feel him there. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I heard footsteps walking away. Slow. Measured. No car door, no engine. Just the soft rhythm of someone walking into the night. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair with a quilt wrapped around my shoulders, the porch lamp flickering once every hour or so. Every shadow on the wall looked like a man. Every creak in the wood was a footstep. At 5:11 a.m., the birds began to chirp. I waited until full daylight before I dared go outside. The front yard looked untouched. Leaves scattered across the walk. The morning paper still in the grass. But when I stepped around back, I found the marks. long, thin scratches across the bottom panel of the kitchen door. 4 lines, each about 8 inches, deep enough to scrape the paint and reveal the raw wood beneath. And on the ground, a single coin, a silver $50. I picked it up. It was warm, as if someone had just held it in their palm. By morning, the fear hadn't faded. It had settled. Like dust in an old house, it clung to everything. I made coffee I didn't want and sat by the window in my robe, the coin on the table in front of me. It looked ordinary, American. Worn edges, the faint outline of Kennedy on one side, the eagle on the other. But it felt wrong. I hadn't held a $50 since Harold used to toss them into my apron after card games. For your trouble, he'd joke. I never spent them. Had a jar full once. Gave them to the grandchildren, one by one, when they still visited. Now this one had appeared outside my door like a forgotten curse. I watched the street. The neighborhood looked the same. Lawns trimmed. Curtains pulled back. The quiet middle-class dignity of older homes and older people. We don't have crime here. No break-ins, no gangs. Just the occasional teenager speeding past in their daddy's truck. And yet, last night happened. And someone else must have heard it. At 8 sharp, I pulled on my slacks, the gray cardigan with the moth hole in the sleeve, and stepped outside. The October air was thin, brittle, like paper waiting to tear. I walked over to Eleanor's porch, her hydrangeas already browning at the edges. She answered the door fast, too fast for someone her age. I heard him, I said, without preamble. Her eyes darkened. He came here too. I felt something twist in my stomach. You didn't answer either. She nodded. Never do. We stood there a moment, just 2 old women facing something we couldn't name. Why didn't you tell me more? I asked. She hesitated. Her fingers gripped the doorframe like she was steadying herself against the words. Because they always say it's your mind going. Who? She waved vaguely toward the sky. Them. The nurses, the doctors, the family. The moment you say you hear things or see things they can't explain, they start calling agencies. They talk about safety, about care plans. Then one day you wake up and your name's been signed over to someone else. She was right. I'd seen it happen. And yet. Eleanor, that voice last night. It sounded human. Her jaw clenched. It's always someone different. Last year it was a crying child. Before that, a neighbor. They know who to mimic. Who's they? She looked behind me as if checking the street. Once a year, she said softly. Only once. Always the first frost. If you answer the door, you don't come back the same. Eleanor, this is Wilmington. We have homeowners associations and bake sales. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And missing people. She stepped back and closed the door before I could answer. I walked home slowly, my legs aching. Eleanor's words rang louder than I wanted to admit. At my front steps, I noticed something new. A second coin, lying just beneath the welcome mat. This one wasn't a $50. A foreign coin, smaller, duller, worn so smooth I couldn't make out the markings. I didn't pick it up. I stepped over it. Inside, I sat down with my notebook. I hadn't used it since Harold died. It was where I used to keep lists, groceries, prescriptions, questions for the doctor. Now I started a new page. Tuesday, first knock. Male voice, scratches on door, $50. Wednesday, foreign coin under mat. Eleanor confirmed same experience. I stared at the words. They looked childish, like I was playing detective, but it made me feel steadier. At 10:30, the phone rang. Mom, hey, you alive? Lillian. My daughter, always with the jokes. I hadn't told her about last night. I hadn't told her much of anything in the past year. Every conversation turned into a lecture. Sell the house, move to her guest room, stop being so stubborn. I'm alive, I said. You sound tired. Didn't sleep well? Too much Judge Judy before bed? I didn't answer. She sighed. Anyway, listen. I was calling because Andrew's got this school trip in November, and we're a little short on cash. There it was. I'll mail a check, I said. She hesitated. You sure you're okay? I'm fine. She hung up after promising to send the mailing address again. Not a single question about me. Not one. The rest of the day passed in a quiet fog. I made soup I didn't eat. Looked through photo albums I'd already memorized. I didn't go out again. But I did check every door, every window, twice before sunset. At exactly 8:13 p.m., the power went out. At exactly 8:13 p.m., the power went out. Not a flicker, not a brownout. Just gone. 1 second the radio was playing. The next I was sitting in complete silence, the kind that hums in your ears like something's waiting to speak. I didn't move at first. I listened. Nothing outside, no generators kicking in, no neighbors calling out. I reached for the flashlight in the drawer beside my chair. It took me 2 tries to find the switch. When the beam cut through the dark, it felt like a weapon, not a tool. I checked the circuit breaker. Everything looked fine. No tripped switches. I knew what I'd find when I opened the front door, but I opened it anyway. The entire street was black. Porch lights, street lamps, the glow from kitchen windows, it was all gone. Like the whole neighborhood had blinked out of existence. I stood on the porch in my slippers, flashlight aimed at the hedges. Nothing moved. Then, 2 houses down, a light came on. Eleanor's window. I saw her silhouette for just a second. She pulled the curtain shut the moment my flashlight hit the glass. But she was up, watching, just like me. I went back inside, relocked the door, and turned off the flashlight to conserve battery. The living room dimmed to nothing. The only illumination came from the moon, hazy through the thin kitchen curtain. That's when the scratching started. Not like last time. This was lighter, sporadic. Not claws on wood, more like something brushing the glass. I froze. The back window. I crept to the hallway, heart hammering so loud I couldn't hear my own breath. I stood behind the kitchen wall and waited. Again, the sound. Something, someone, was dragging fingers along the window pane. Not knocking, just touching. I stayed there for 10 minutes, motionless. The flashlight turned off, gripped like a club. Then it stopped. Silence again. At 10:20, the lights returned. Not all at once, more like the house had to remember how to be alive. The fridge clicked. The heater groaned. The ceiling fan creaked once before settling. But I didn't relax. I didn't sleep. And when morning came, I went straight outside. There, under the kitchen window, was the 3rd coin. This one was copper, not American. I knelt with some effort, bones aching, and picked it up with the sleeve of my sweater. It felt used, like it had passed through too many hands. I added it to the notebook. Wednesday night, full blackout. Window sounds. 3rd coin, copper, unknown origin. Eleanor had power. She saw me. No words exchanged. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I called the library. Wilmington Public, how can I help? Do you still keep newspaper archives? The voice on the other end perked up. Yes, ma'am. On microfilm and digital now. Any specific dates you're looking for? I don't know yet, but I'd like to come look. Sure thing. We're open until 6. At 2:15, I stood in front of the dusty computer kiosk in the history room, my reading glasses fogging from my breath. I wasn't sure what I was even looking for, until I typed Wilmington plus disappearances plus autumn. It took 37 minutes to find the first article. Elderly woman missing after Halloween storm, no signs of forced entry. The date was October 31st, 1989. Then, local man vanishes. Only clue a foreign coin, found at scene. Then again in 2002, 2010, 2017. Always late October, always alone at night. Always dismissed as a runaway, an accident, dementia. I printed out what I could, clippings, names, notes. They all said the same thing in different ways. No one believed old women when they vanished. And always, always, a coin left behind. I sat at one of the long wooden tables and spread the pages out. 5 disappearances, 5 coins, no convictions, no suspects, no patterns, except one. They all lived on my street, Maple Street. I stared at the papers until the room blurred. I felt sick. Not because I was scared, but because I realized how long this had been happening, and no one talked. Not the families, not the papers, not the police. They just forgot. At 5:55, the librarian announced closing time. I packed everything into my bag and headed out. The sky had already turned navy. The first frost was coming. I could feel it in my knuckles. I didn't go home. I went to Eleanor's. She opened the door before I knocked. "You found it," she said. I stepped inside. "You found it," Eleanor said again, quieter this time, as if the words had slipped out before she could stop them. I didn't sit. I didn't take off my coat. I just looked at her, standing there in her thin slippers, hands clutching a chipped tea mug like it was the only thing holding her to the ground. "How long?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted past me to the window, then back to the hallway, as if checking for eyes where there shouldn't be any. "How long have I known?" she asked softly. Or, "How long has it been happening?" "Both." Eleanor nodded slowly, then shuffled to the table and set her mug down. Her living room smelled of old fabric and something sharper. Lavender oil, maybe, or mothballs. The curtains were thick, old-fashioned. Her walls were lined with photos. Her wedding day, a son in uniform, a girl with a toothy smile. All ghosts now. "They say the first one was in 1971, she began. "Mrs. Connolly lived 2 houses down from me. Sweet woman, used to bring over those orange spice cookies every Thanksgiving. One night she just wasn't there anymore. They said stroke. She'd had some signs." "And you believed it?" "Back then, yes. I was young, tired. 2 kids, a husband who barely came home sober. I didn't have time to think." She looked at me then, straight in the eyes. "But the second one? That's when I started keeping notes." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, cracked leather journal. It was worn soft with time. She slid it across the table to me. Inside were names, dates, descriptions, coins too, taped carefully to the pages, each entry written in the same small, neat hand. "I stopped sleeping properly in 95, she said. That year, the knock came to my door, just once. I didn't answer, but after that, I knew." "Why you?" I asked. She shook her head. "It's not personal, it's pattern. They always pick the quiet ones, the widows, the ones no one will raise a fuss over if they vanish." I wanted to say that wasn't true, that people would care. But I remembered the way my daughter rushed through phone calls, the way neighbors smiled politely but never stopped to chat, the way even the postman barely looked up anymore. I turned the page. More names. One I recognized. Agnes Weller. Eleanor nodded. Lived on the corner. Disappeared in 2010. The family said she moved to be closer to her son. But her house was sold by the bank, and they found a coin in her mailbox. Did you ever tell the police? I tried. Once. In 2002. They sent a wellness officer. She took one look at my notebook, smiled like I was 5 years old, and asked if I wanted to talk to someone about grief. I closed the journal gently. My hands were trembling. Eleanor, I said, why me now? Her eyes softened. Because you're the last one left. The words hit like cold water. What do you mean? All the others, gone or moved. The new people, they're too young, too loud, too connected. Cameras, alarms, cell phones. You and I were the only ones who still live like they did, the only ones easy to isolate. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Eleanor stepped closer. They only come for one, every time. But once you've been marked, once you've heard the voice, it doesn't stop. Not until they get what they want. I felt a weight settle in my chest, a truth too big to deny now. I think, she continued, they keep knocking, year after year, testing the door, waiting for the one time you're too tired, too lonely, too curious. And then, she didn't finish the sentence. I nodded slowly. I heard them last night, at the window. Eleanor paled. That's new. What do you mean? They never moved before, never changed tactics. They knocked at the same door, at the same time. If they're at your windows. She trailed off, hands tightening around the edge of the table. What does that mean? Eleanor didn't answer. Instead, she reached behind the curtain and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote this for myself, in case I ever started to forget. You should do the same. Write down the rules. I took the paper. On it were 5 lines, scrawled in black ink. 1. Do not open the door after dark, ever. 2. Do not speak to the voice. 3. Do not look directly through the window after midnight. 4. Do not touch the coins with bare hands. 5. Do not tell anyone who will try to help. I looked at her. You broke the last one. She smiled faintly. I think it's time someone else knew. I stood there a long moment, the weight of it all pressing down on me like snowfall. Then I folded the note and slipped it into my coat pocket. Thank you, Eleanor. When I stepped back into the cold, my breath rose in front of me like smoke. The sky had gone flat gray. Wind stirred the dead leaves along the sidewalk. Something about the street felt different now. Hollow. My porch light was on when I got home, but I knew I hadn't left it that way. I stood at the edge of my porch, staring up at the light I hadn't turned on. It glowed soft and yellow, just like always, but I knew what I'd left behind. Before walking to Eleanor's, I'd switched off every bulb, double-checked every lock. I'd even unplugged the lamp in the hallway. Old habit. Harold used to call it sleeping with no witnesses. Now, something had turned it on again. I walked slowly up the steps. No sign of a break-in, no disturbed leaves, no footprints. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me. Everything smelled the same. Old wood, dust, a trace of rose from the oil I'd rubbed into my hands that morning. But the air felt off, charged, like the house had exhaled while I was gone and hadn't realized I'd returned. I checked every room, closets, under the bed, windows, nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I sat down in the armchair by the fireplace and pulled out Eleanor's rules. I read them again, one by one, like a prayer I didn't yet believe in. Then I added a 6th. 6. Don't assume you're alone just because you don't see anyone. That night I didn't undress. I kept my clothes on, flashlight within reach, and slept, sitting upright, the way I used to on long train rides. At 3:03 a.m., I woke with a start. Not to a knock, to a voice. "Mabel," it whispered, but not from the door this time. From the hallway, the back hallway. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My mind was screaming, "There's no one else in this house." But the voice didn't care what my mind knew. "Mabel, it's me. It's Harold." I clenched my hands. It sounded like him. Not just close. Perfect. The exact timbre, the slow rhythm he had when he was half tired. The slight drag on the vowels. The way he used to say my name when he was cold and reaching for another blanket. I knew it wasn't him. Harold had been dead for 17 years, buried in the town cemetery with a cedar box and a faded U.S. Navy flag. But my body betrayed me. I stood. Stepped toward the hallway. "Mabel," it came again. "Come here, sweetheart. Just for a moment." Tears sprang into my eyes. Not because I believed it was Harold, but because I wanted it to be. The voice grew softer, as if it sensed my hesitation. "I miss you. I've been waiting. Just open the door, honey." I stopped at the end of the hallway. The guest room door was shut. It had been shut for months, ever since Andrew visited last spring and left his soccer cleats inside. I reached out. My fingers grazed the doorknob. It was ice cold. "Mabel," the voice coaxed again. "Please." I yanked my hand back like I'd touched fire. "No," I said aloud. "You're not real." The house went still. Not quiet. Still. No creaks, no pipes, no refrigerator hum. Just absolute, unnatural silence. Then, a sound. A soft thunk, like something dropped gently on wood. I forced myself forward, step by step, heart hammering so loud I was sure the thing inside could hear it. I opened the guest room door. It was empty. The soccer cleats were still there, covered in dust. But on the bed, sitting right in the middle of the faded blue quilt, was another coin. This one wasn't old. It was pristine, golden, larger than the others. It caught the moonlight through the blinds and glinted like something alive. I didn't touch it. I backed out of the room, shut the door, and locked it from the outside. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn the key. In the morning, I called the power company. Yes, they said. There had been an outage 2 nights ago, a small grid issue. No, they said, no record of a blackout last night. I asked if any maintenance workers had been on my street. "No, ma'am," the woman said. "Why do you ask?" "No reason," I lied. That afternoon, a white SUV pulled up outside my house. It was unmarked, but I recognized the woman who stepped out. Her name was Tamara. Social services. She'd come around last year when Eleanor slipped in the garden and someone called for help. She smiled too wide, walked too slow. I opened the door before she knocked. "Mrs. Harper," she said cheerfully. "So nice to see you again. Do you have a few minutes?" No. Her smile didn't budge. "It's just a quick check-in. A few folks on the street reported lights going on and off at odd hours. Thought you might be in need of assistance." I stared at her. Odd hours? Since when is that a crime? "Of course not, but we do like to check in with our senior residents now and then, just to make sure everyone's feeling safe." I stepped outside, shut the door behind me, and crossed my arms. "Would you like to come in and see for yourself?" Tamara blinked. "Well, only if you're comfortable with that." I smiled, but it wasn't a smile. "No, I'm not." Tamara lingered like a smell you can't place. One of those artificially sweet ones, too. fabric softener, or lemon-scented cleaning wipes. I stayed on the porch while she typed something into her tablet, her smile flickering like a candle about to give up. "Well," she said finally, "if you do ever need anything, here's my card. Don't hesitate, all right?" She handed me a pale blue business card with her name and a cheerful tagline: "We care because you matter." I didn't take it. She left it wedged in the porch railing instead. I watched her drive off without a word, the SUV rolling slow down Maple Street like it was scanning for signs of decline. For people like me, the old, the stubborn, the inconvenient. I waited until the car turned the corner before I exhaled. Then I saw the mail sticking out of my box. I hadn't checked it in 2 days. Bills, flyers, a birthday card from my niece in Florida, and one letter with no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed: "You were warned. Stay inside tonight. Do not speak. Do not answer. Do not think it's over." That was all. No signature, no postmark. It hadn't been mailed. Someone had dropped it off by hand. I stood there, holding the letter, the wind trying to steal it from my fingers. They knew. Whoever or whatever it was, it knew I was close. It knew Eleanor had talked. It knew I was resisting. Back inside, I checked every lock again. I drew every curtain, even in the laundry room. I unplugged the television, the toaster, the clock radio in the bedroom. I sat in silence with the pages from the library spread out before me and Eleanor's journal open to the most recent entries. Then I heard a car. Not Tamara's, my granddaughter's. Jenna. I almost didn't open the door when she knocked, but her voice cut through the wood. "Grandma? It's me." I peeked through the peephole. It was her. Brown ponytail, hoodie, anxious eyes. She looked like she'd come straight from class. I opened the door. "Jenna?" I said. "It's not a good time." She stepped inside anyway, kissed my cheek, dropped her backpack with a thud. "Mom sent me," she said. "She's worried." "About what?" Jenna gave me that look, equal parts pity and annoyance. "You've been ignoring her calls. Aunt Carla says you're acting weird. Lights on at night, moving furniture. That kind of thing. She sent you to check on me. She said I was the only one you'd let in." That was true, and smart of her. Use the one person I still trusted. "I'm fine," I said. "You can tell your mother that." "Grandma." I turned my back and started folding the pages on the table. She followed me. "What's really going on?" I didn't want to say. She was 20, barely. Still thought the world made sense, that everything scary had a logical explanation, a cure, an app. But then she said something that made me freeze. "I've heard the knock, too." I turned slowly. "2 nights ago," she said. "At my apartment. I thought it was a neighbor. But when I looked out, there was no one there. Just a coin. It was under the welcome mat." She pulled it out of her hoodie pocket. It was silver, worn, foreign, just like mine. "You picked it up?" "No," she said quickly. "It gave me the creeps. I used the corner of a book." I sat down hard in my chair. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I thought I imagined it. But then Mom said you were acting strange and I don't know. I felt like something was wrong. I had this dream last night. I heard you calling me, but I couldn't reach you." I felt a tear slip down my cheek. First one in days. "I didn't call," I said. "I know." "That's why I came." I wanted to hug her, to tell her she was brave and kind and everything good that was left in this world. But there was no time for softness. Instead, I stood. "You have to leave." "What?" "It's not safe here. It's not safe anywhere tonight. You need to go. You need to go now, Jenna. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are, I said, firmer than I'd spoken in years. You are young, and they want the old. They want the forgotten. I'm not pulling you into this. She looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my face must have stopped her. I'll go, she said finally, but I'll be back. Not tonight. She paused at the door. Whatever this is, she said, you're not alone. She left, and for the first time I wasn't so sure that was true. Jenna's taillights disappeared down Maple Street just as the sun dipped behind the trees. The sky turned to bruised orange, then gray, then nothing at all. I stood by the door long after she'd gone, the air thick with the things I couldn't say while she was here. You can't explain fear to the young, not the kind that doesn't come with a face. I turned off the porch light. Then I unplugged the landline. I don't know why I did that part. Habit, maybe. Or instinct. A phone ringing in the middle of a night like this felt like it could tear through you worse than a scream. The guest room stayed locked. The coin still lay on the bed, untouched. I lit one candle and placed it in the kitchen, just like Eleanor's journal said. One source of light, no electricity, nothing they could manipulate. Then I waited. By 9 p.m., the house was still. No scratching, no knocks, no voices. Part of me wondered if the storm had passed, if they'd moved on. At 9:37 p.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't breathe. It rang again. Then 3 soft knocks. I stood in the dark living room, candlelight flickering from the kitchen. Then a voice. Mrs. Harper? A woman, polite, warm. Mrs. Harper, it's Nurse Trina from the outreach program. We received a report you might be in distress. I just want to make sure you're all right. I didn't speak. Mrs. Harper, we're required to enter if we believe someone is in danger. My hand clenched around the base of the candle holder. It sounded like a nurse. The tone, the cadence, even the clipboard I imagined clutched in her hands. But I hadn't called anyone. Jenna wouldn't have. Lillian? Maybe, but not this fast. The voice came again. We'll just do a quick check. No need to be scared. The doorknob rattled. I had locked it. Deadbolt and chain. But it turned again, harder this time. Mrs. Harper, please, it's very cold. May I come in? A pause. Then, it's me, Jenna. My knees almost gave out. The voice had changed mid-sentence, gone from soft and concerned to Jenna's bright, anxious tone. Perfect. Too perfect. Grandma, open the door. It's me? I didn't move. Didn't speak. Mabel, it said. I'm out of time. The doorknob stopped turning. The silence that followed was worse than anything. Worse than the knock. Worse than the voice. I stayed rooted for a long time, muscles trembling, eyes fixed on the door as if I could will it shut with nothing but will. Then I heard it. The softest whisper, right by the mailbox slot. Let us in. It didn't come from a person. It came from beneath the door, like breath leaking through the cracks. I ran to the pantry, closed the door, locked it from the inside. It was a small room, barely big enough to stand in. I crouched among the old flour tins and cracked mason jars and held the candle like a lifeline. The whispering continued for hours. Sometimes it was Harold, sometimes Jenna. Sometimes my own voice, calling out, begging to be let inside. I buried my ears into the crook of my elbow and shook like a child. At 4:02 a.m., it stopped, not all at once. Like a wave pulling back into the sea, the sounds faded. The air changed, lighter, clean. I stayed there until first light. When I stepped out, the house was unchanged. No broken windows, no footprints. But the front doormat was gone. In its place was a single object, a photo. of me, standing in my kitchen window, looking out. And behind me, in the picture, was a figure, pale, gray, blurred like a smear in the film, no face. Just the shape of someone who had already been inside. I burned the photograph at sunrise. I didn't even think about it. My hands acted before my mind could argue. The edges curled black. The image twisted into smoke. And for a moment I thought I saw movement inside the flames, like something trying to climb out. When it was nothing but ash, I poured cold water on it and watched it dissolve into gray pulp. The house felt wrong after that. Not haunted, invaded. Like someone had rearranged the air while I wasn't looking. I opened every curtain, every window, let the light pour in even though the November morning was thin and weak. The world outside was sharp and ordinary. Lawns, mailboxes, a boy on a bicycle. No sign of the night I'd lived through. But then I saw Eleanor's house. Her front door was open. I crossed the yard fast, slippers crunching on frost. The inside smelled faintly of gas and something sour. "Eleanor," I called, stepping inside. Silence. Her teacup still sat on the table from 2 nights ago, lipstick mark intact. Her coat was draped across the chair, but the place was empty. Almost. On her kitchen counter lay her journal, the one she'd shown me. Open to the last page. Octa 29. They've changed the pattern. The light means they're inside already. If I'm gone, tell her not to open the door. It's too late for me. The pen had torn the paper where the last words ended. My chest went hollow. Eleanor had known. I walked from room to room, half expecting to find her sitting somewhere quiet, smiling the way she always did when I brought over soup. Instead, I found her shoes by the bed, her glasses folded neatly on the nightstand, and on the pillow, a coin. Copper, the same as mine. I backed away, nearly tripping on the rug. My breath came out shallow and fast. Whatever had happened last night hadn't stopped at my door. When I returned home, I locked everything twice. Then I called the police. The young officer who came was polite, nervous, far too cheerful for a man looking into a missing persons case. His badge read, Patrolman Reeves. He wrote everything down, nodding too often. When I showed him the coins, he said they looked collectible. When I mentioned the voice, he smiled gently. "Ma'am, are you sure this isn't some kind of phone scam? People target seniors. I didn't say it was on the phone." He coughed, looked at his clipboard. "Right. Well, we'll do a wellness check. Maybe she went to family. She doesn't have any left." He hesitated, then scribbled something. "We'll, keep an eye out." That meant nothing. He left after 20 minutes, promising to call. He didn't. By evening, the sky had turned the color of old paper. A group of neighborhood women stood in the street talking. Mrs. Blanchard from 2 houses down, the McCready twins, and someone I didn't know. They stopped when they saw me. I caught words: missing, gas leak, dementia. I didn't bother correcting them. Let them think what they wanted. I knew the truth. At 6 p.m., a city worker taped a notice to Eleanor's door. Unsafe structure, vacant until inspection. They didn't even go inside, just sealed the place like a box no one wanted to open. By 7, I was alone again. The coins sat on the table in front of me. $50, copper, silver, and gold. 4 now, 4 nights, 4 disappearances in the records. Maybe that's what they wanted, to complete a set. I opened Eleanor's folded note again. "Do not tell anyone who will try to help." Tamara, the police, the neighbors, all of them fell under that rule. The candle sat ready beside me. One match. One light. As darkness thickened outside, I noticed the frost on the windows begin to form patterns. Not random, not natural. Lines and curves that looked almost like handwriting. I leaned close. For a moment, I thought I could read it. Letters scratched backward, faint and human. Then a sound behind me. A single knock, not on the door, on the glass. I froze. The candle trembled. Another knock, soft, polite. Then a voice, very low, right by my ear. "Mabel, you forgot to turn off the light." I spun around. No one there. Just my own reflection, trembling in the window, mouth open in mid-breath. Outside, in the dim streetlight, every other house was dark. Except mine, and Eleanor's. Her upstairs light, bright, steady, impossible, shone through the sealed window like a signal meant for me. I sat staring at that light for a long time. It didn't flicker. It didn't dim. Just glowed. A calm, steady rectangle in the window of a house that should have been empty. Every few seconds, I thought I saw movement inside, like someone walking slowly past the curtain. Eleanor's silhouette? Or whoever came after her? By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I wrapped my coat around me, slipped my flashlight into the pocket, and stepped outside. The air bit at my face, raw with frost. The neighborhood was asleep. Every window dark but that one. The light at Eleanor's seemed to pull me forward, step by step, until I was standing at her porch again. The unsafe structure notice flapped weakly in the wind. I peeled it away. The front door opened without resistance. No lock, no chain. The smell inside was stronger now, gasoline and lavender, sweet and rotten at once. "Eleanor?" My voice came out as a whisper. Silence. I moved through the narrow hallway. The floorboards complained with every step. In the kitchen, the table was bare. The teacup was gone. So was the journal. But there was something new on the counter, a folded newspaper clipping weighed down by a coin. Local woman found dead after apparent fall. The photo was Eleanor, 20 years younger. The date? November 3rd, 2002. That couldn't be right. I picked it up. The paper was crisp, new, not an old clipping at all. Someone had printed it that morning. My stomach turned cold. A sound upstairs. Slow footsteps. I should have run. Any sane person would have. But sanity had left Maple Street days ago. I climbed the stairs, one hand on the banister, flashlight shaking. Eleanor? The upstairs hallway was darker than it should have been, the light from the single bulb muted like it had to fight its way through heavy air. I reached the end, to her bedroom door. It was half open. Inside, the golden coin gleamed faintly on the dresser, and beside it, on the floor, lay a pair of shoes. Not hers. Men's boots. Mud-caked. Fresh. I backed away. Something moved in the corner of the room, a shadow that wasn't attached to anything. I aimed the flashlight, but the beam faltered, dimmed, and died. I didn't hear the steps behind me, only the whisper right against my neck. "You weren't supposed to come." I stumbled down the stairs, hit the wall, found the door handle by instinct. Cold air flooded in as I ran outside. I didn't stop until I was back in my yard, chest heaving, flashlight dead in my hand. The light in Eleanor's window went out, and mine came on. I stood in the middle of my lawn, looking at my own house. The living room lamp glowed a steady yellow. I could see the edge of my chair, my blanket, my cup on the table, everything exactly as I'd left it. Except I wasn't in there. Something was. A shape sitting in my chair. Motionless. Watching me through the glass. I took one step forward. The shape lifted its hand and waved. I dropped the flashlight. The lamp inside blinked twice and went dark. When I finally forced myself back indoors, the house was cold. Too cold. The air smelled faintly metallic, like pennies in a wet palm. I checked the living room. The chair was empty. But on the seat lay another coin, silver this time, smaller, etched with something like a sun. I picked it up with a napkin and set it with the others. 5 now, a complete set. I thought of the articles at the library, of the years between each disappearance. Every 5 to 7 years, like a cycle. But what if the pattern had shifted? What if it was finishing what it started long ago? At 2 a.m., the phone rang. I hadn't reconnected the line, but it rang anyway. "Mabel," the voice said, low and close. "You opened her door." I froze. "Now you've invited it in." The line clicked. Silence again. When dawn came, I found something new outside. The frost on the lawn had melted in a perfect circle right by the porch. In the center of that circle, the soil was blackened, burnt, and something, had written in the dirt, "One more night." By morning, I'd moved the coins to a box and locked it inside my husband's old gun safe. I didn't have a gun anymore, but the steel still gave me comfort, like I could seal the dark in, even if just for a while. The message in the dirt haunted me. One more night. Like a countdown. Like a warning carved from breath and ash. I called no one. What would I say? That a missing neighbor's house lit up after she vanished? That something wearing my face waved at me through my own window? That coins kept appearing like breadcrumbs to something I couldn't see but felt every minute? Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and opened Eleanor's last journal page again. I read it until the words blurred. Then I wrote my own. I wrote everything. The first knock. The coins. The voice that called itself Harold. Jenna's visit. The figure in the window. Eleanor's empty house and the newspaper that told me she'd died 20 years ago. I wrote it like it was my last letter to myself. If someone found it, they might not believe it. But at least they'd know I wasn't crazy. That I fought. Because I was starting to understand what this was. Not a haunting. Not a ghost story. A hunt. And I was the one left running. At noon, I made tea and watched the wind stir the dying maple leaves. The street was still. Too still. Like the neighborhood was holding its breath. Even the birds had stopped coming to the feeder. Around 3 p.m., someone knocked on the door, just once, sharp and fast. I didn't move. Then came a voice, familiar, careful. "Grandma?" It was Jenna again. I opened the door this time, but only the screen. She looked pale, her eyes tired. "I went to Eleanor's," she said. "She's not there." "I know. They said she moved, that she was transferred to assisted care." "She didn't." Jenna hesitated. "I went to the facility they listed. She's not there either." I opened the screen door and stepped aside. She came in slow, as if afraid the house might swallow her. We sat. I poured tea. She didn't drink. "I looked up those articles," she said. "The ones from the library. Grandma, those people? They didn't just vanish. Their homes were sold without notice. Wills rewritten, all within days." She reached into her bag and pulled out a document. "I found this on a public database. It's a power of attorney form, for you, signed 2 days ago." I stared at her. "I didn't sign anything." "I know, but it's there. Your signature. Your daughter Lillian listed as primary agent." My mouth went dry. "They're preparing to erase you," she said. "Just like the others." It wasn't just something out there. It was people, too. Or maybe things pretending to be people, wiping away those who wouldn't be missed, the lonely, the old, the inconvenient. Why now? I whispered. Jenna's voice dropped. Because you broke the rule. You opened her door. She was right. That's when it changed. When it stopped being a presence outside the glass and became something that sat in my chair, called my name, mimicked my blood. I had let it in, and now it wanted the last piece. Me. That night, I didn't light the candle. I didn't block the doors. I sat in the living room with the safe beside me and the coins inside, a blanket on my lap, my hair pinned up the way Harold used to like. If this was the last night, I wasn't going to spend it hiding in a pantry. Jenna stayed too. She sat on the floor beside my chair, arms crossed, phone ready. I don't care what it says, she muttered. I'm not leaving. At 11:58 p.m., the lights flickered. Jenna grabbed my hand. At midnight, every bulb in the house went out. No knock, no voice, just a hum, low, mechanical, like power lines groaning in the wind. But there was no wind. Then, a sharp clatter from upstairs. The guest room. I rose. Jenna followed. We climbed the stairs slowly. No flashlight. Just the glow of the moon through the hallway window. The door to the guest room was ajar. I pushed it open. The bed was stripped bare. The coin was gone. In its place sat a figure, not a person, a shape. Soft, shifting, like smoke wrapped in skin. It looked at me, no face, but I felt it watching. It held something in its hands. My photograph. The one it had taken from outside. And then it spoke, not aloud, but inside me. You've already left. I blinked, shook my head. You opened the door, not just hers, yours. I reached for Jenna's hand, but she was gone. The hallway was empty. My heart raced. Jenna? I called. No answer. I turned back. The room was empty too, only the window left open, and on the floor, the sixth coin. I stared at the coin on the floor until my knees buckled. I dropped beside it, not touching, just staring. It wasn't like the others. It was dark. Not copper, not gold, not silver. Something older. Black as coal and cold as winter breath. And etched into its face wasn't a sun or an eagle or a dead man's profile, but something that looked like a door. Closed. I whispered Jenna's name again. No answer. I ran through the house, every room, every closet, shouting until my throat burned. Nothing. Not a single trace. Her phone still sat on the armrest where she'd left it. Her coat hung by the door. Her scent, faintly floral, lingered in the hallway. But she was gone. Taken. Because of me. Because I opened the wrong door, asked the wrong questions, ignored too many rules. At sunrise, I called the police. Again. This time, I didn't tell them about the coin, or the voice, or the thing upstairs. I just said my granddaughter had disappeared, that she was here 1 minute, and then she wasn't. I tried to sound scared but rational, like a woman losing her mind just slowly enough for them to still feel responsible. 2 officers came, a man and a woman. They searched, asked questions, took statements. Any history of mental illness, Mrs. Harper? No. Any chance she left without telling you? She didn't. They asked to see the security footage. There is none, I said. They both gave each other a look I'd seen before. The same one Tamara gave me. The look that says, she's slipping. The male officer stepped outside to make a call. The woman lingered. She's probably with a friend, she said, like I was a child she needed to calm. These things usually turn out fine. She wouldn't leave without telling me. The officer hesitated, then added gently, She's 20, ma'am. Young people drift in and out. They come back. She didn't drift, I said. She vanished. But they didn't believe me. They left at noon, promising to follow up. By evening, I was alone again. The black coin still sat on the floor upstairs, untouched. And now, for the first time, the house felt different. Not haunted. Occupied. I could hear it. Not steps, not voices. Breathing. Long, slow, patient. The sound of something waiting in a corner of a room, just out of sight, sure that you'll come closer eventually. I didn't sleep. At 2:12 a.m., the mirror in the bathroom cracked. No impact, no reason. Just a clean fracture down the center, as if the glass had been holding something too long and finally gave way. At 3:48 a.m., I saw the figure again, in the reflection of the microwave door. It stood behind me, closer than last time. When I turned, the room was empty, but my reflection stayed frozen in the microwave's glass, still looking behind me, not moving, not blinking. It smiled. I staggered back. The smile didn't fade. It just waited, wide and still, like it knew something I didn't. I covered the microwave with a dish towel. At 4:33, the front door unlocked itself. I heard the deadbolt click. I crept down the stairs with a kitchen knife in one hand and Eleanor's rules clutched in the other. When I reached the door, it was slightly open. Cold air crept through the crack. On the porch, a package, wrapped in brown paper. No name, no tape. Just folded neat and tied with a string. I brought it in. Slowly. Set it on the table and stared at it for an hour. At dawn, I opened it. Inside was a dress, blue, faded, my size, my style, one I hadn't worn in years, and a note. You wore this the last time you saw her. No signature, just those words, typed on the same paper as the last note. I dropped it all into the fireplace, watched the fabric blacken, the note curl inward like a dead hand. And I whispered something I hadn't said in 17 years. Harold, if you're still anywhere, I need you now. The fire didn't answer, but the mirror in the hallway fogged, and someone wrote a word in the mist. Tonight. By noon, I'd made peace with dying. Not in the poetic way people write about. Not gently, not beautifully. Just accepted. Like the last check you know will bounce. There was no help coming. Not from the police, not from my daughter, not from a world too busy to notice the old go missing one by one. But I still had a choice. Not whether it would come. That was decided. But whether I'd meet it cowering or prepared. I spent the day readying the house, not with crosses or garlic or spells, just with memory. I walked every room, touched every photo, spoke aloud to no one. I told Harold he was right. I should have moved years ago. Told my sister I forgave her. Told myself I had not imagined it. That it happened. All of it. At 4 p.m., I wrote 2 letters, one to Lillian, one to Jenna. Jenna's was shorter. I told her she was brave, that not everyone makes it through the world with their softness intact, that if she ever wondered whether she mattered, she should remember this. Something came looking for her, because it knew she was light in the dark, and light always draws the worst of things. Then I locked the letters in the drawer beneath the old phone. I set the table. Not for dinner, just for the end. Chair, candle, journal, knife, and the safe with the coins. All 6. They hummed now. A low vibration you couldn't hear, only feel, like when thunder's too far to rattle windows but close enough to press on your skin. Outside, the street was empty. No cars, no wind, no birds. I waited. At 9:43 p.m., the TV turned on by itself. Static. I hadn't plugged it in. I didn't move. At 10:12, every clock in the house stopped ticking, even the battery-powered one in the bathroom. Then the lights dimmed, not off, just low, like the house was holding its breath. At 11:58 p.m., I lit the candle. The flame fluttered, nervous. I opened the safe, laid each coin in a line across the table, oldest to newest. Then I spoke aloud. "You want me? I'm here." The house groaned. Wood settling, or something older, older than timber and brick and nail. The groan of something waking up. Then, a knock. Once. Twice. 3 times. I didn't move. "Mabel," said the voice outside. A man's voice, gentle. "Mabel, open the door." I didn't. The voice changed, became Jenna's. "Grandma, please." My hand trembled, but I stayed seated. Then came the scrape. Long, slow across the door, like nails, or something worse. Then silence. And then the back door opened. I hadn't unlocked it. I heard the hinges cry, slow and heavy. Steps in the kitchen. I gripped the knife. But when the figure appeared in the hallway, I didn't raise it. Because it wasn't a monster. It was me. Or what used to be me. Older. Hollow-eyed. Skin gray like smoke. Wearing the blue dress from the package. Mouth smiling like it remembered something awful and wanted me to remember too. It walked to the table. Sat down across from me. Didn't speak. Just watched. I tried to speak, but my voice caught. It tilted its head. Then one by one it reached for the coins. Slid them toward itself. All 6. Then it pushed one back. The black one. Toward me. I didn't touch it. "Why?" I asked. Its mouth didn't move, but the answer filled the air like smoke in the lungs. "Because you stayed." Then it stood. Walked to the door. Opened it. Stepped into the dark. And vanished. I sat there until morning, the coin still in front of me. I didn't know what it meant. Reward? Punishment? A marker? A warning? But I didn't move it. When the sun rose, the house exhaled, the clocks ticked again, the lights returned. And in the mirror across the room, just me. A little older, a little grayer, but still here. I didn't sleep. Just watched the sky shift from coal to pale blue, as if the dark had decided it had done enough. For now. The house was quiet again. No whispers, no cracking glass, no voices pretending to be people I loved. And yet, the quiet didn't feel like peace. It felt like pause. The black coin still sat on the table. I hadn't touched it. I wasn't sure I could. It didn't belong to this world. It pulsed, not in light or sound, but with the heavy weight of something unfinished. At 7:04 a.m., the phone rang. Not the landline, my cell phone. The one I barely used, buried in a drawer beneath old chargers and expired medication. Caller ID unknown. I almost let it go. Almost. But curiosity is a rusted key. It sticks, but it turns. I answered. Nothing. Just breath. Then a click. I sat there, heart steady, strangely calm. At 9 a.m., the power company truck arrived. 2 men in neon vests checked the pole outside, tightened something, then left. Routine, they said. A neighborhood-wide maintenance. I nodded, didn't ask questions. They wouldn't have answers I needed. Later, I found a new envelope in the mailbox. Plain, no stamp. Inside, a photo of Jenna, alive, safe, smiling. Sitting at a table, this table, but in a different house. One I didn't recognize. New walls, new windows. The coin was in front of her. The black one. On the back of the photo, one sentence. She stayed, too. I pressed the photo to my chest and wept. Not from fear, not even from grief, but from the unbearable knowing that I didn't understand the rules. that I might never. At noon, the world resumed. The McCready twins returned from wherever they'd gone. Mail was delivered. A teenage boy skateboarded past, earbuds in, oblivious to the weight his wheels rolled over. I opened the windows, let in air, real air, crisp and cold and empty of shadows. By evening, I cooked. Not out of hunger, there was none. But I needed the rhythm. Chop, stir, simmer. The sound of a spoon on the bottom of a pot is its own kind of prayer. I lit a second candle. The black coin remained on the table between us. I began a new page in my notebook. November 4th. It came. I stayed. It left. Jenna stayed too. Then I added, the coins are not just warnings. They are invitations or choices. I think that's what no one understood. It doesn't take you. It asks you. A knock at the door startled me. Daylight. No voice. I opened it. A child stood there. 8, maybe 9, bundled too tight in a coat a size too big. He looked up, eyes dark and too still. You dropped this, he said, and held out a coin, the black one. But mine was still on the table. This was another, identical. I didn't move. I didn't drop anything, I said. He stared at me. Not yet. Then he turned and walked down the steps, vanished between two hedges. I closed the door, locked it. Then I went to the table and stared at the coin I had. Still there, still pulsing. That night I dreamed, not of monsters or voices, but of Eleanor. She sat beside me in a church pew, hands folded, eyes ahead. Not scared, just still. They won't stop, she said, but they'll pass. I looked at her. Why me? Because you stayed, because you opened the door and didn't run. I was ready to die. She smiled faintly. They know, but they also know something else now. What? She looked at me. You don't die easy. When I woke, I was still in the chair, blanket around my shoulders, the notebook open beside me. A new note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Keep writing. Someone's listening. The black coin was gone. The day passed without incident. No letters, no knocks, no coins. Almost worse than the chaos. Quiet after a storm is where doubt creeps in, where the mind pokes at the wounds, asking, did that really happen? And maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's the real trick, not the fear, but the forgetting. I didn't forget. I made coffee, washed dishes, moved slowly through the house like it was sacred ground, because in a way, it was. A battlefield no one else could see. And I was the last soldier left standing. I went to Eleanor's house. It was still boarded up. The city inspector had tagged it unsafe, though there'd been no fire, no collapse. Just silence. The front yard was wild with wind-blown leaves. I stood there a long while, then stepped off the curb and walked around to the back. The garden still held the shape of her. Tools left where they fell. Gloves folded neatly on the bench. She'd always kept it tidy, even in November. And there, on the small stone by the roses, someone had carved 2 words with something sharp and angry. We remember. I touched the stone. Cold, damp, real. Then I heard the door creak. Not the front, the back. It was open. Again. I stepped inside, just past the threshold. Same sour, sweet smell. Same hush, like the walls themselves were listening. But there was no menace now. No breath behind my ear. Just stillness. And a letter. On the table. In my handwriting. I picked it up. It was dated for tomorrow. Mabel, you'll think you're past it. You're not. It doesn't end. It just changes shape. Stay sharp. Don't close the journal. Don't stop remembering. They come in cycles, not lines. The coin disappears, but the door remains. And you are the door now. Right. Remember, that's how you keep them out. I stared at my own words, penned in the ink I hadn't used in years, a draft of tomorrow's memory. I took the letter, walked home. I didn't look back. That night, I opened the journal again, wrote everything: the child, the second coin, the dream of Eleanor, the warning. Then I added something new. I am not the victim of this. I am the witness, and I will not go quiet. I sat in silence until the candle burned low, until the shadows began to inch closer across the floor like fingers testing the edge of a blanket. I didn't flinch. "You're still here," I whispered to the dark. "I know." It didn't answer. Not in words, but the wind outside shifted. A low whine through the chimney, like someone breathing through teeth. Then, a single thud from the attic. I'd never gone up there. Harold kept his tools, his things. I hadn't touched them since the funeral. Just let the dust gather, like layers of time. I stood, climbed the narrow steps. Each creak of the ladder groaned like warning. The attic was exactly as I remembered: boxes, suitcases, old furniture, and the faint smell of varnish and decay. But now, in the center of the floor, stood a chair. Mine, the one from the kitchen. And on it, a new coin. Smaller, red, not metal. Flesh. I stepped closer, bent down. It wasn't a coin, it was a button. Plastic. Cracked. From Jenna's coat. I held it in my palm. It was warm. She was still out there. Somewhere. Not gone. Not lost. Held. Maybe trapped. Maybe not. Maybe waiting. And something inside me, something I thought was long buried, rose up. Anger. Not fear. Not sorrow. Not resignation. Fury. They'd come to my home. Taken my friend. Touched my granddaughter. Played their games like I was a ghost already. But I wasn't gone. I was still here, and I knew their rules now. The next time they came, I wouldn't just listen. I'd answer. I didn't sleep that night, didn't sit, didn't close my eyes. I stood by the window until the sky lightened, the stars gave up, and the world decided to pretend it was ordinary again. But I wasn't pretending anymore. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I took the button from Jenna's coat and strung it on a length of thread. Red, frayed, the kind I used to sew patches with when Lillian was still falling off bicycles. I tied it like a charm around my wrist. Then I unlocked the attic and left it open. A signal. If they wanted a door, I'd give them one, but it would swing both ways. I boiled water, steeped tea, sliced an apple. Ordinary things. I wanted the house to smell like something clean, not fear, not old paper and smoke. At 10 a.m., I packed a small bag, just what I'd need. Candle, notebook, matches, flashlight, the old Polaroid. I opened the safe and took out the 5 remaining coins, placed them in a velvet pouch, left the black one behind. That one was theirs. The others were mine now. Markers, keys. I didn't know where I was going, not exactly, but I had an idea. The child who brought the coin, the photograph of Jenna in a house I didn't know, the phrase, "she stayed too." It wasn't over. It had simply moved. I walked to the edge of town, past the cemetery, through the woods, to the old church that hadn't been used since before Harold's stroke. Its doors hung loose on their hinges. The sign out front still read, "Sunday service 10 a.m., even though no one had stood at that pulpit in over a decade. Inside, the air was cold and full of memory. The pews were dusted in silence, but the altar was clean, not polished, just untouched, waiting. I stepped forward, set the pouch of coins on the wood, then I lit the candle, and I spoke. "I know what you are." My voice didn't echo. It landed flat, like the air swallowed sound. You feed on silence, on being unseen, on women who fold in instead of standing up. I held up the coins, one by one. These are your trophies, but they're also your trail, and I'm not the only one who can follow it now. I placed them in a row. Mrs. Connolly, Agnes Weller, Eleanor, me, Jenna. I set the sixth space empty. Not this time. The flame of the candle shuddered, then bent sideways. Not from wind, from something else. From something coming. I didn't move. I opened the notebook, tore out every page, laid them on the altar, pressed flat. Words upon words, everything I'd seen, heard, survived. Then I picked up the Polaroid, snapped a photo of the altar, the coins, the papers, the flame. It printed in my hand. Slowly, grainy, but clear. I wrote on the back in ink. This happened. Then I stepped back, blew out the candle and left everything as it was. An offering, or a warning. On the walk home, the wind picked up. Not cold, brisk, like breath on the back of my neck, but not unfriendly. The house was still there, waiting for me. Safe. For now. I taped the Polaroid to the back of the front door, so I'd see it every time I considered letting someone in. And that night, I wrote the last page. November 5th. The hunt ends when someone turns around and faces it, not with fists, with memory, with truth, with the refusal to vanish quietly. I folded the journal, tied it shut. Then I made tea again, sat in the same chair I always had, and waited, not for them, but for Jenna. At 2:16 a.m., a knock came. Once, not at the door, at the back window. I turned slowly. She stood there. Pale, tired, but alive. Her eyes locked on mine, and she mouthed two words. You stayed. I opened the door. She stepped inside. No coins, no wind, no vanishing. Just Jenna, her hand in mine. No more silence. And the house, for the first time in weeks, felt like a home again. Thank you for listening. If this story found you, write your own. Someone's always listening.